World War II began in Europe in 1939. The U.S. military officially deployed troops into that war in 1941. Then the war ended 4 years later in 1945. 16 million Americans served in the armed forces in World War II. More than 400,000 Americans died in that war. Almost half a century later, a Democratic congresswoman named Marcy Kaptur of Ohio was approached by a constituent, a World War II veteran, who wanted to know why there was no World War II memorial in Washington, wanted to know if a memorial could be constructed in Washington. That year, 1987, Congresswoman Kaptur introduced the World War II Memorial Act in the House. The bill did not pass. She reintroduced it again 2 years later in 1989, and it did not pass. Then 2 years after that, in 1991, she introduced it again, and the bill did not pass. Finally, 1993, the fourth time around, Marcy Kaptur introduced the bill again. This time, it was the day after a Republican senator named Strom Thurmond had introduced companion legislation in the Senate. And finally, this time in 1993, Marcy Kaptur got it passed. And President Bill Clinton signed it into law, and the World War II memorial was finally going to happen. It was finally going to be built. It took about a year to pick the location. It took another 4 years to pick a design. Finally, in 2001, they broke ground. Construction started. And 3 years later, the memorial was complete, almost 60 years after the end of World War II. It took so long for Congresswoman Kaptur to get the World War II memorial greenlit. And then it took so long to build and then finally open. That there was one very sober, very serious consequence of this delay, for this honor built for these soldiers who served in that war. It was just too long down the road. Many of the veterans who served in that war did not live 60 years beyond the end of that war to see the memorial that was built to them. And so in 2005, a year after the memorial opened to the public, a nonprofit organization called Honor Flight started helping World War II veterans get to the memorial from wherever they lived in the country, free of charge. The organization arranged travel, flying vets from across the country to Washington to see this memorial to their contribution. The goal is to get every veteran who wants to see the memorial to see it. Well, when the government shut down early this morning, one of the parts of government that shut down was the World War II memorial and all the memorials. That, however, did not stop dozens of World War II veterans who showed up on an honor flight trip to see the memorial today. Together, they walked up, they cut the police tape, they removed the barriers that blocked the memorial, and they went on in. They had traveled from across the country to see the memorial honoring their service, and they were not going to let this pesky little government shutdown get in their way because they're awesome. Some of the veterans were escorted by members of Congress, some of whom kept their mouths shut. But some of them could not resist the opportunity for a self-serving photo op to try to wrap themselves up in those veterans' glory, to lament loudly the closing of this memorial to these honorable veterans, even though they themselves had just voted for the shutdown that closed the memorial. These veterans, of course, earned the right to visit the World War II memorial whenever they want. It's only right that they ignored the government shutdown to complete their journey to Washington. Members of Congress who made it their own story today, their own hypocritical story in particular, should be embarrassed if they are capable of it. Would that those same members paid similar tribute to all people serving in the military right now. While the men and women in uniform will continue to get paid despite the shutdown, bases across the country are issuing furlough notices to civilian workers who provide a wide range of services. Marine Corps installations in Southern California and Arizona, more than 3,500 employees are subject to emergency furloughs. Fort Bragg in North Carolina, they're going to be furloughing about half of their almost 15,000 strong civilian workforce. Fort Bragg's also going to be cutting back on family counseling and survivor outreach. If we as a country feel that there is political capital and moral investment in making sure that veterans in this country get treated right and honored, even when we are otherwise having political kerfuffles that screw everybody else over, then it is not just about cutting the ribbon and getting into the memorial. It is about making sure that even in a time when the government is shutting down, that they get all that's due to them. That does it for us tonight. We will see you again tomorrow night. Thanks for being with us. Now it's time for the last word. Have a great night.